into this here for a moment. And so we're going to be talking about King David. And obviously King David is a character that many of us know. We've heard all the stories about King David. I want to share a story on the lesson of the threshing floor. So this is a story in King David's life where he comes to a place, it's called the threshing floor. And if we miss this, you might miss the entire lesson around King David's life. And I don't know if you know this, God was gave a lot of praise to King David. And we're going to read this here. And before we get to 2 Samuel 24, I want to open up right here with Acts 13:22, which is, I believe, God's thesis statement over King David's life. And I love this. I mean, think about it. If you get to the end of your days and you meet God, what is the thesis statement? What is he going to say about you and me? And King David says this, that after removing Saul, which was the previous king, God made David their king. God testified concerning him. And I love this. This is the thesis statement. This is what I think about David. If anyone has any questions, I know David made mistakes. I know you've made mistakes. I know I've made mistakes. But if anyone has questions, God says this about him, testifies concerning him. I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. And this is my favorite line. He will do everything I want him to do. He will do everything. I want us all to read that together. Just the word everything. He will do everything I want him to do. I love that. It's not like King David's like, oh, I'm going to give you a little bit of my life. No. Everything's up for grabs. Anything you need to talk to me about, God, you can talk to me about it. Anything you want to change in my life, you can change. Anything you want to pivot in my life, you can pivot. He said everything he handed over to God. And I know a lot of us in modern culture, we think it's really easy for us to think at times, and I'm so guilty of this, to think that if I check a few Christian things off the box, I've given him everything. And I don't know about you, but there are times in my life, and I've been walking with Jesus since about 19 years old. So I think it's a few decades. I don't know. I'm not doing math right now. We got a lot to do this morning. But it's been a while. And so there's, in my life, I'll be like, all right, God, I've given you everything. I've handed everything over to you. And then I'm like, I find myself like, wait, God wants that thing. But no, I gave you everything. He's like, yeah, now we need to talk about that thing. I'm like, no, God, I gave you everything. I planted a church, all right? I traded architecture for pastoral ministry, all right? That's not the best business plan, okay? And so I did everything, God. He's like, I want to talk to you about that thing. I want to talk to you about your attitude. I want to talk to you about your, anxious presence or whatever it might be, that you're not trusting me in this area or with your kids. I'm like, I had one kid, I had another kid. The amount of times I'm like, God, you can have my kids. I trust you with them. And it's like, please, Jesus. And y'all know, a lot of y'all have kids that are out of the house. You're like, that guy has no idea what he's talking about. Those kids are sweet right now. And I know that. I know my kids are sweet, but they're not sweet. But they're sweet, But I love this contrast is because I love this question. Is you got King David on one side, and then you got King Saul on the other side. And this was after the period of the Judges. You can go read Acts 13. It actually, if you don't know a lot of Bible history, you're like, I want to know. Acts 13 gives you a precise understanding of the history of the people of God, all the way to King David and through him as well. But you got King Saul on one side, and he was the first king after the Judges. And then you've got King David, who is after King Saul. All right? And this tells the tale of two different types of people, and really two different types of futures that you and I can have as well. King Saul started out in the same way that King David did, from somewhat of a lowly spot with a lot of acclaim as it related to war and leadership and all of that. But what happens is King David's life, or King Saul's life and King David's life ends completely different. And if you know anything about David, we just saw and we just read in Acts 13 that God says, this guy's got his heart after me. He'll do everything I want him to do. But then you go read the Psalms. You go read 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, a little bit of 1st, 2nd Kings. You'll see that there's a mess to his life. I don't know that David gave him everything that he wanted him to have. Or maybe there were seasons that he thought he was, and then he had to learn a lesson. And so what's interesting is I'm not preaching to you that you have to be perfect, that you have to have it all together. But here's what I'm saying is Saul and David started the same way, but they finished very differently. And I know we see this in self-help or great talks and all of that, that it doesn't matter how you start, it matters how you finish. That's not self-help, that's Bible. That's Bible. Is that you can start. I'm a great testimony. You'll hear a little bit of this at the end, but I was the kid you tell your kids to stay away from. All right, you know what I'm talking about. All right, God saved me at 19 years old, radically saved me. My wife went to a party one time on accident. All right, I put the parties on. All right, so that's very different. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how you start; it matters how you finish. Again, that's not self-help. That's Bible. All right, so now Saul lost it. David kept it. David built a great legacy. There's not a lot of great talk about Saul to this day. So the question is this, is which one are you? And then the second statement is, don't assume we're David. You might have a lifestyle, you might have some check marks that look like David, but let's just be careful we don't have a heart like Saul, that we miss out. And so in this series, Spirit and truth is this idea that really that God can work through me through worship and through spirit and through truth. And you've got these two guys, these two legacies that are being built, Saul and David. One loses it, and one gets it, and one keeps it, and one knows how to sustain it. So here's what happens is in their life, you see this, is that in David's life, he gets to the end of his life, as we're going to see in 2 Samuel 24. This is 2 Samuel 23 is actually his last actions, so to speak, or his last words. 2 Samuel 24 is his last action. And it's going to tell more about his life, I believe, than anything else in the other 24 chapters building up to his life. And then obviously it continues in 1 Samuel as well. But so here's where we're going to start. I'm going to read this and then we're going to build out from here. So 2 Samuel 24 verse 18 says this. On that day, Gad went to David and said to him, go up and build an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, or Araunah the Jebusite. And that's it. That's all it says. Raise your hand. Anyone in here have a threshing floor at their house? No one? Okay. You have a threshing floor? No, I thought. Oh, okay. You didn't build one? No. Okay. I was like, that's gonna be the first one. Last service, no threshing floors. This service, no threshing floors. Okay, that's good. So when we read this, why am I saying that? Because we don't know why that matters. I'm just being honest. Okay, when I read the Bible and I'm like, what does it matter that he is told to go buy a threshing floor? It feels pointless. When you study a little bit more of the context, you're like, this might be one of the most important pivot points in the Old Testament out of any other moment in the Old Testament. Obviously, there's plenty of great ones, but so it set up David that he did everything the Lord asked him to do. Let me set it up like this. Okay, so can we put up the photo of my kids up here again? I told y'all, we got Knox, Rory, and then we got Chloe. And like I said, number 2, anyone got middle child? You know what that middle child energy is like? The anointing of the middle child? Rocky, he's ready to fight anyone. It doesn't matter if it's his sister, his brother, a cat. It doesn't matter. He's going to fight anyone he can. And so we're sitting there, and this is also the one he's the priest of the home, okay? We'll go to eat dinner, and this is the one he always says, we have to pray. We have to pray. And we're sitting there at the dinner table, and we do our prayer. Doc starts eating, Chloe starts eating, we start eating. I look over at Rory, I'm like, man, he's praying in the Spirit. He's praying in tongues. He's just sitting there, just like this. I'm like, the Lord is speaking to him. What is happening? I said, Rory, what are you doing over there? He said, I'm thinking. I said, wow, what are you thinking about? The majesty of the Lord. I mean, what do you think about over there? 4-year-old? He said, I know you asked me to eat, but I'm thinking, am I going to listen or not and eat my dinner? And if you got kids, you already know the next statement out of my mouth. You don't have to think about that. You do it because I asked you to, right? And we're having fun with it, but in the same way, how often is it true of us to not have a heart of David to do everything the Lord asks us to do? So we're like, okay, you can have all of this, but this one area, you got to trust me with your kids. No. Let me take care of my kids, God. You take care of my finances. You take care of my business. Okay, what about my marriage? What about my career? Whatever it might be. It's like, no. You don't have to think about it. You just have to obey it. And the problem is, like, my kids are still learning. It's like, does my dad really have my best intentions at heart? Does he really have what's best for me in his heart? In the same way, the reason I think we'll hold things back from the Lord or withhold trusting him in our finances, trusting him with making that invite, stepping out and inviting somebody at our work, whatever it might be, trusting him with something we're trying to problem solve, but promise you, there are things you can't solve without God. You got to hand it over to him. You got to say, I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't even have to think about it. I'm putting it back in your hands, God. I'm going to do everything you want me to do. Why? Because we want God's favor on our life. You cannot lose, thank God you cannot lose your salvations. Jesus paid for your past, your present, and your future sins. That's why we're here today celebrating this. But you can lose seasons in your life, favor of God, the blessing of God in different areas of your life. And David and Saul are a great masterclass on what it looks like to get it back, to keep it. David messed up royally. That's the story we're talking about. And the reason we're talking about this is because it's not pastors, it's not staff at church, it's not great political leaders that need the favor of God. It is the mom on a Tuesday trying not to hurt her kids. It is the dad on a Wednesday coming home, trying to leave work at work and be a blessing at home at the same time. It's the business owner that's saying, I don't just want a good business, I want a God-honoring business. It's the guy that says, I don't want a good marriage, I want a godly marriage. I don't want good kids, I want godly kids that can stand up to the bad influences in culture. That I know God brought my kids for this time in history, but I need God to bless them. I need God to give favor on their lives because there's some things I cannot do without God. And so there's some things in my life there's things I don't even know that I need God's life, or that I need God's favor on, but I know I need his favor all my whole life. And what I don't want us to do is to become part of this cultural Christianity that just checks off a box and says, I've done the things, I've done what I'm supposed to do, I've checked off this box, and then we get to heaven, and this is not in the Bible, but let me just paint this picture. Though we get to heaven and we all see a what if reel, where God says, what if you surrendered all of your life to me? What could have happened in your home? What could have happened in your business? What could have happened in your peace, in your confidence, your joy, your livelihood? What could God have done if we gave him everything? And I love that God gives us David because David was a mess up just like me. But David listened to God and got it back. So number one, what did he do? He had to learn to never forget his source again. Never forget your source. 2 Samuel 24, verse 10, it says this, that as David had, it says this in verse 10, David was conscience-stricken after he had counted the fighting men, and he said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. Can I just pause right there for a moment? I love that he said, I have sinned. I'm not going to go so negative, all right? But let me just say, I think too often we call sin a mistake. I'm not trying to bring back the purity culture, all right? I'm not trying to bring purity rings, all of that. Not bad. I'm just saying, sometimes we got to call sin, sin. I missed the mark. God, you have more for me. I messed up. I said something I shouldn't have said. I did something I should have did. I doubted you in a place I shouldn't have doubted you. He said, I've sinned greatly. So how did he sin? Well, if you go back in time to 2 Samuel 5, when David gets installed as king over Judah and over all of Israel, it says that the reason they asked David, this is important, watch what happens. The reason they asked David to be king is this is not on the screen, but you can find this in 2 Samuel 5. They said this, in the past, while Saul was king over us, you, David, were the one who led Israel on their military campaigns. David got to the place in his life, at the end of his life, where he saw this moment right here. Why was he conscience-stricken? Because he knew God was starting to turn the tide of favor against David. And he felt, okay, now there's some battles that are coming against the people around us. I'm going to have to do a count of the men that can fight, because if God's going to leave us, this is on me now. And they do a 9-month count of all the men, 1.2 million, scholars say, men that they counted over 9 months. I don't know if you've ever sinned and it took you 9 months to figure out, oh, I made a mistake. I sinned. That's where David is. And they warned him, his counsel warned him not to do this. And David goes through the cycle. You can actually, if you want to really go into deep dive, Deuteronomy 8 gives a great cycle of this. And I want to show you all this on the screen, is that everybody, David and Saul started this way with humility in their life. And the humility breeded obedience to God. That I'm going to do what he asks, I'm going to listen to God, I'm going to obey God. And if I obey him, what does God do? God blesses me. And we'll talk more about what that means, okay? but he blesses me in my life. So Saul and David increased in influence, increased in number, increased in blessing. Now there's two different, let me say, they both had this desire, and at many times they had this next step, which is after all of this happens, I'm going to trust in God more. So I was humble, I obeyed God, it worked out for me, so I'm going to trust God more. Right? And that's the cycle we all want to be on. And David and Saul both started from a low place. They both knew God got them what they had. If we're honest, though, sometimes if things just start working a little easier than they used to, instead of trusting God, we trust in ourselves. And so we get humility, obedience, blessing, and then we start thinking we did this, or we got there, and we forget the prayers we were praying that nobody else knew we were praying. And then people start saying, good for you. Look at you. I want to have a life like you. I want to have that home like you. I want to have a business like you. And we knew God got us there. Because we know we're good, but we're not that good. And so we start trusting in ourselves. And what's the cycle start over again? Instead of humility, it's actually humiliation. Which then, okay, God, I need you. I need you. And we receive that blessing again. And then we can turn it back to trust in self. So David's in this place where it was the war and the military campaigns that got him to this place. And now when he questions God's grace and goodness in his life, he goes back to the I don't want to say the source, but the thing he thought was the source of his blessing. So if it worked back then, he thinks it'll work again. Little does he remember, he didn't need the people. He didn't need the land. He only needed God in the cave. He only needed God when he was fighting the bears. He only needed God when Goliath was out there humiliating the people of Israel. And what does he do, and what's the lesson for us is that David was sitting there counting men. So the question is simple, is what are you counting on? What are you counting on to get through? I know you love God. I know we love God, but when times get hard, what are you counting on to get you through this week? Do we get in a habit of sometimes just asking God to do something or bring something to our lives, forgetting that I don't need the resources, I just need the source. I just need God. I don't need the blessing, I just need the blesser. I need him back in my life. And this is what happens is that God will bring about prosperity in our lives to bring us to a place where we receive this prosperity. And prosperity isn't the TV preacher. The Hebrew word for prosper is to be pushed ahead. I've never seen this more clearly in my life than one day. We had a 2010 4Runner, and this was the day I found out the gas gauge didn't work anymore. And there's a highway in Dallas. I talked to a couple, they were from Frisco. There's a place called 380. And when I bring up 380 in our area, people have panic attacks in the audience because it's the worst place to drive. I'm driving down 380 and I find out I have no gas and I got to get out of this red light. When it turns green, I got to push this car over here to Costco. And now my wife's a little pregnant at the time, right? And so I'm like, you're 8 months, you're not 9 months, get out. Let's go push this car. I did not do that. And I look strong, I know I look big, but I was struggling, and I start feeling myself, I'm getting this thing going, and I start really, I'm like, I got this. Hannah, take a photo. I want to have another kid later. All right, so I'm like pushing this. Some of y'all get that later. All right, so I'm just pushing this, and I get to this place as I'm pulling into Costco. I'm like, I got this. You wouldn't know this in this spot unless you had to push a couple-ton car over this point of resistance. And I'm sitting, I'm pushing, I hit this point of resistance, and I can't get past this point of resistance. God, by his grace, sends two men, way stronger than me. They come and help me get over that. That's what prospers. That's what favor is. That's what blessing is that there's some things with my kids, I can't get into their heads. I can't fix this situation. There's some things at the office. I got this problem. I got this anxiety, this addiction. God, I need you to push me past this point. Why? How do we do this? We have to remember who got us there in the first place, who's answered all of our problems in the past, and now we're going to trust him continually to be our source. We can never forget our source. And I have to set that up because now the next 2 points we're going to go rather quickly through. But number one, you cannot forget your source. Number two, you have to do whatever it takes to get God's favor back in your life. Again, you are his favorite. You are the apple of his eye. But there are people God loves using. How do we become that person? You have to do whatever it takes to get it back. Watch what it says in verse 21 of that same chapter. Araunah said, "Why has my lord the king come to his servant?" And David says, "To buy your threshing floor, so I can build an altar to the Lord, so that the plague on the people may be stopped." So here we are, and then fast forward to 24. He keeps pushing back. And if you don't know this, David didn't have to buy this land. David didn't have to pay for this land because this threshing floor was already under his jurisdiction as king. And he says this in verse 24. "I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing." It's really easy to worship God when it's easy. It's really easy to say, "I trust God, I believe God," when it's easy. I don't know if you know this, there's a scripture that's like, "I believe God, I'll do whatever it takes. I believe God, I really believe in God." Go and read James. Even the demons believe in God. And they shudder. Demons are more afraid of God than us. I'm not saying you should be afraid of God. I'm just saying God's big. We do student groups sometimes, and they say, "Why should we be afraid of God?" I was like, if God's not on your side, you should be very afraid of God. The demons have better theology than some of us, and they shudder at God. And some of us, God will ask us to do something. It's like, "Yeah, I believe you, but I don't think I need you. I'll call you whenever I'm in an emergency." No. Before you hit the red line, before you hit the emergency, go to God, trust God, follow God, turn back to God, do whatever it takes, even if it costs you your reputation, even if it costs you some of your comfort, even if it costs you some of your time. Do whatever it takes to get God back on your side. Not that he's against you. I'm just using this to emphasize this idea. I heard a business leader say this one time. He said, "I'm afraid of nothing, but I am afraid of losing God's favor. The second I lose God's favor, I got no chance in this world." So I'm never gonna forget my source. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get it back. And number 3, I'm gonna worship with what I have left. This is probably my favorite section of scripture in the Old Testament. If you're gonna pin me down, what's your favorite? I know you wouldn't do it. What's your favorite? I would say this one right here. That's my favorite. Oh, I love this so much. Okay, so here's David. Imagine David's life for a moment. If you don't know David, I'm just gonna walk you through this scene as we begin to close this morning. It's that King David didn't start out as a king, all right? He was birthed. He was born in a family of a bunch of other brothers. And King David is a young child at this time when King Saul is reigning and ruling over Israel, okay? And as the torch is being passed from Samuel, or King Saul rather, to King David is just working out as a shepherd with his family. Samuel the priest hears from God that he's going to go to Jesse, and he's going to anoint one of the children of Jesse. It's going to be David. And so the father, think about how little influence. Think about where David started. He's out on the fields. He's working his job. He's honoring his father. His father, Jesse, looks over all the other brothers. We know this story, right? But let me just set this stage, okay? Let's call him little David gets passed over by his father. Samuel says, "None of these are the ones that are going to be the king to come. Do you have any other sons?" David comes out and he gets anointed. He's still not doing anything other than serving his dad at this time. For about a little over a decade at this time, he's still serving his dad. He was about a teenager when he gets anointed. Okay, so David is in this scene where he gets anointed. Then he grows up. We all know the story where he defeats Goliath and everybody is watching. David goes from a nobody with nothing, with a great anointing, with a little influence, kills Goliath, starts to get a little bit of influence. So then King Saul brings David into his house to become a confidant and to play harp to bring King Saul peace. But King Saul has this song echoing in his head that the whole community is singing, is that King Saul has killed his hundreds, but King David his thousands. Or his thousands his tens of thousands. And so what ends up happening is future David is sitting there serving the future King Saul. And he runs for his life because Saul wants to kill David. and he runs to a cave. And you would think at this time he loses his influence. He actually begins to gain it even more because 400 men go with him to the cave, to a place where there's nothing and no one over there and no resources. His influence is still building. And he doesn't go to harm. He doesn't come to kill Saul. Now this is where it gets interesting. Little shepherd boy gets a little influence with Goliath, starts serving the current king, goes out on the cave, and then what happens is the torch gets passed from Saul. 2 Samuel 5, they anoint David over Judah. So now watch this. Shepherd boy, now he's got some influence. Now he's got some land. Not only Judah, but now Israel. They're giving him north and south. They're giving him the entire place, and he is king over all the people. This is the precipice. This is the point of his life that he had been working for. All of his influence had been built. He starts pushing back the Philistines. He starts pushing back the Amorites. Starts pushing back the Arameans. He starts pushing back all these people. Territory starts expanding. David has everything he could ever want, and he starts to think, I don't need to trust in God. I'm going to start trusting in myself. That what got me here was me. It was never God. He has all of this influence, and watch what happens. God comes to him and says, there's a plague going to come, and I know you built this over 30 years, but you're going to lose everything you had in 3 days. And the plague starts to devour all the influence David had, all of the favor David had, all of the blessing he had worked so hard for 3 decades to build. He loses it in 3 days. And some of us might be there today, that I started strong. My marriage started great. I thought this was going to work. I thought my kids were going to be on the right track. And here we are at the point where everything I worked so long to build is gone. And what does God tell David? Go to the threshing floor. I.e., go to the last thing you have left. Worship me with the one thing you have left. See what happens from this simple place, this place that we would think, oh, it's a little step of obedience, a little thing, it's not enough to do much. You know what happens on that threshing floor? I'll get ready for this. This is where Solomon, his son, would build the temple of God to serve the people of God for hundreds of years. Oh, I think you missed it. He worshiped God with what he had left. I know you got a kid that might be wayward. They have no faith. They're with the wrong people. Let me ask you as the parent, do you have a little bit of faith to pray for them? Worship God with what you have left. I know you might be in a place right now in your marriage. It might be on the rocks, and I'm praying for you. But also, do you have a little bit of time left with this spouse to get some things right? Can you worship God with that little bit of relationship you have left? I know we got a little bit of breath in us. Maybe we got 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Maybe we got a lot of years ahead of us, but we got 10 seconds right now. Can we give God praise with the time that we have, the breath in our lungs? I'm so passionate about this. This is my life. This is my life. We moved from Colorado when my mom and my dad got a divorce when I was 4. My brother was 3. My mom moved us down to Irving, Texas, of all places. If you've ever been to Irving, don't go there. All right. We move in, 1-bedroom apartment, live with my uncle. We got couches we're pulling together. Me and my brother are sleeping next to each other. Pull out couch, living on food stamps. My mom's getting her master's degree. Her just finished her bachelor's degree. Throwing newspapers to pay for, just to get us going. She had a TV. She starts turning on preachers on TV. She has words. She has a voice. My mom started becoming a prayer warrior in that home. I hate this prayer. I'm so glad she prayed. She said, God, would you make my son sick of his sin? She didn't have a lot, but she had some faith. And now I'm praying over those kids. I'm like, I never had a dad praying over me. We got a church because my mom did we have food stamps. We got nothing. My mom did. I got a little bit of faith. I know how to pray. I got a church nearby. I can get my kids around some godly men, and they're going to raise him up. You just worship God with what you've got left and watch what he'll do. And when you take what you don't have, what you think is not enough, you put that in the hands of the one who is enough. It always, always becomes more than enough. Come on, is anyone grateful that God can take what we have, restore it, bring us back to a place of grace? So right now,